It starts with a glint, a soft, heavy warmth in the palm of your hand. For generations, this was more than money. It was certainty, a promise forged in the earth's core and stamped with the seal of the most powerful nation on earth: gold. You could hold it, weigh it, hide it under your floorboards. It was real. It was yours. And then, one day, it wasn't. One day, the most powerful man in the world decided that the very thing you trusted, the bedrock of your security, was now a crime. This is the story of the day the United States government declared war on gold and how a single piece of paper changed the meaning of money forever. The year is 1933. America is on its knees. The roaring 20s have ended not with a whimper, but with a catastrophic crash. Factories are silent. On the streets of every major city, a grim parade shuffles forward. Men who once commanded boardrooms now stand in bread lines, their eyes hollow with a hunger that goes deeper than food. This is the Great Depression, a relentless, soul-crushing economic blizzard with no end in sight. In the heart of this storm, a new president takes the helm: Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He arrives in Washington with a charming smile and a will of iron, promising a new deal, a new hope. But behind the confident voice on the radio, FDR and his advisors are staring into an abyss. They are fighting a monster they don't fully understand, and their hands are tied. The problem, the invisible chain holding them back, is gold. For decades, America had operated on the gold standard. It was a simple, powerful idea. Every single dollar bill was backed by a specific amount of physical gold stored in the nation's vaults. A $20 bill wasn't just paper. It was a claim check for a piece of solid gold. This system was designed to create stability and prevent the government from printing money recklessly. But in the grip of the Great Depression, this symbol of strength had become a fatal weakness. The core of the problem was fear. As the economy crumbled, people did what people have always done in a crisis. They sought safety, and nothing on earth felt safer than gold. They started to lose faith in the banks. Whispers turned to rumors, and rumors turned to panic. A bank in one town would fail, and the news would spread like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone wanted their money. Not the paper bills, but the gold they represented. They lined up in droves, clutching their deposit slips, demanding the one thing the bank couldn't give everyone at once: their gold. This was the terrifying anatomy of a bank run. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy of doom. As more banks collapsed, the fear intensified. People stopped trusting paper money too. Why hold a promise for gold when you could hold the gold itself? They started hoarding it, stuffing gold coins into mattresses, burying gold bars in their backyards. Every ounce taken out of circulation was another nail in the coffin of the U.S. economy. For the Federal Reserve, America's central bank, the situation was a nightmare. The standard way to fight a recession is to inject more money into the economy, lower interest rates, make borrowing cheaper, and encourage spending. But the Fed couldn't do that. The gold standard was a straitjacket. Every dollar they printed had to be backed by a finite amount of gold. With panicked citizens draining the nation's gold reserves, the Fed had to do the exact opposite of what was needed. They had to raise interest rates to make holding dollars more attractive than converting them to gold. It was like throwing water on a drowning man. They were tightening the money supply at the very moment the economy was suffocating from a lack of it. This is the impossible situation Franklin Roosevelt inherits. The nation's financial system is in a death spiral. Unemployment is soaring towards an unthinkable 25%. And FDR knows he has to act, not with small measures, but with a move so audacious, so unthinkable, it would redefine the relationship between a citizen and their government. On the evening of April 5, 1933, just a month into his presidency, Roosevelt sits down at his desk in the Oval Office. He picks up a pen. He is about to sign Executive Order 6102. The document is deceptively simple. It requires all persons to deliver all but a small amount of their gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve. In exchange, they would receive $20.67 per ounce in paper currency. The order makes it illegal for any American citizen to own more than a small amount of gold. The news hits the country like a physical blow. For millions of Americans, this is not just an economic policy, it's a betrayal. They had been told their entire lives that gold was the ultimate security. Now, their own government was ordering them to surrender it, to trade this tangible, timeless wealth for a stack of paper bills printed by the very institutions that were failing them. It felt like theft. Newspaper headlines screamed in disbelief. In homes across the country, families gathered in hushed, anxious conversations. Obey the law and hand over their life savings for what felt like worthless paper? Or defy the president and become criminals in their own country? The logic behind Roosevelt's order was brutal, but in his view, necessary. He wasn't just trying to stop the hoarding. He was planning something much bigger. By forcing all the gold into the government's vaults, he was severing the direct link between the paper dollar and a physical piece of metal. This was the first critical step in breaking the chains of the gold standard. The deadline of May 1st arrived. All across the country, citizens dutifully lined up at banks, not to withdraw, but to deposit. They brought their gold in cigar boxes, in leather pouches, in handkerchiefs. Their faces were a mixture of resignation, confusion, and quiet anger. The Federal Reserve's vaults, once being drained to the brink, began to fill up. The government's gamble was working, but this was only Act 1. In early 1934, Roosevelt signed the Gold Reserve Act. This act did something that would have been impossible just a year earlier. It officially changed the price of gold from $20.67 an ounce to $35 an ounce. Overnight, the value of the U.S. dollar, relative to gold, plummeted by nearly 60%. It was a stunning move. Think about it. Everyone who had dutifully turned in their gold at the old price had just been fleeced. The government had bought their gold for $20.67, and now that same ounce of gold was worth $35 on the government's books. The stroke of a pen had created billions of dollars in profit for the U.S. Treasury. But this wasn't about profit. It was about power. By devaluing the dollar, Roosevelt had effectively given the U.S. economy a massive injection of cash. Suddenly, there were billions more dollars in the system. This meant one thing: inflation. And while inflation is often seen as an enemy, in the context of the Great Depression, it was the medicine the patient desperately needed. Prices began to rise. This was a godsend for farmers and a lifeline for businesses. Most importantly, it made debt cheaper. Anyone who owed money, and in 1934, almost everyone owed money, found their burden lightened. Freed from the golden straitjacket, the Federal Reserve could finally do its job. It began to print money and slash interest rates. Credit, the lifeblood of the economy, began to flow again. The government, now flush with cash from the gold revaluation, launched the massive public works projects of the New Deal, putting millions of Americans back to work. The economic engine, which had been seized for years, began to sputter back to life. The decision to abandon the gold standard was one of the most controversial in American history. To his critics, Roosevelt was a tyrant who had confiscated private property and broken the government's most sacred promise. They argued he had opened the door to unlimited government spending and endless inflation. But to his supporters, he was a savior. He had been willing to make an impossible choice to save the country from total collapse. He understood that the gold standard, a relic of a bygone era, was a catalyst for destruction in the modern world. The truth, as it often is, lies somewhere in the murky space between. The recovery from the Great Depression was long and painful, and no single policy can claim all the credit. But it's undeniable that breaking the link to gold gave the government the tools it desperately needed to fight back. For the next 4 decades, Americans lived in a strange new world. Gold ownership remained illegal. It wasn't until 1974, under President Gerald Ford, that the ban was finally lifted. Then, in 1971, President Richard Nixon made the final break, announcing that the U.S. would no longer redeem its dollars for gold, even for foreign governments. The world entered a new, uncharted era of fiat currency, money that has value simply because a government declares that it does. Today, we live in the world that Roosevelt built. Our money is an abstraction, a series of numbers on a screen, backed by nothing more than faith. The debate he started in 1933 rages on. Did he save capitalism from itself, or did he plant the seeds of its eventual destruction? There are no easy answers, but the story of that fateful decision serves as a chilling reminder that the rules of money can be changed overnight. The glint of gold, once a promise of certainty, now carries the shadow of a warning about power, panic, and the terrifying fragility of the things we trust the most. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. See you next time.